Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us a colossal stack of sources today, diving into one of the most high-profile and enduring true crime sagas of the 21st century. The murder of Laci Peterson and her unborn son, Connor.
It's a case that just refuses to settle. Our mission today is to synthesize a truly massive timeline. We're looking at sources from new documentaries like American Murder, Laci Peterson, all the way to really complex legal opinions.
Spanning 2 decades.
Exactly. We need to extract the crucial, often missed details that really cemented the conviction and clarify the arguments that are currently challenging it in 2024.
And that's the real challenge here, guiding you through a narrative that begins in December 2002 and is still making headlines today. We're not just summarizing, we're dissecting the specific pieces of circumstantial evidence that piled up so high the jury, well, they couldn't ignore them.
Right. Let's start right at the beginning. The last day Laci was definitively seen alive was December 23rd, 2002. She was 8 months pregnant.
A busy day for her, right?
Yeah, she had a prenatal checkup, did some grocery shopping, and then that evening, she and Scott got haircuts at her sister's salon. Her mother, Sharon Rocha, spoke to her on the phone around 8:30 p.m., finalizing Christmas plans.
And then comes the morning of December 24th, where Scott Peterson's story immediately begins to, well, it just spirals into contradiction. What was his official alibi?
So his account, the one for the trial, states that Laci was alive and well between about 7 and 8 a.m. He claims she woke up, ate cereal, and was getting ready to mop the kitchen and walk their dog, Mackenzie.
And he leaves when?
He says he left around 9:30 a.m. for a solo fishing trip at the Berkeley Marina, which is, about 90 miles away.
But the sources show that the moment Laci was reported missing, the story he was telling family and friends was completely different.
Exactly. And this is one of the most damning initial contradictions. He originally told several key people, Laci's relative Ron Gransky, a neighbor, a family friend, that he was golfing that day.
Golfing, not fishing.
He only switched to the fishing story when he was talking to police. He claimed he didn't want to sound like a neglectful husband, going golfing on Christmas Eve.
That's a thin excuse.
Very. Detectives pretty quickly concluded Laci was likely killed the night of the 23rd or early morning on the 24th, before Scott even left the house.
So Scott gets back home around 4:41 p.m., finds the house unlocked, and Mackenzie is loose in the yard with her leash still on.
Right. And his reaction is what drew intense focus. He doesn't call 911. He calls his mother-in-law, Sharon, and then immediately goes to the laundry room.
The laundry room.
Yes. That's where the physical evidence started building immediately. When Detective Brocchini arrived, Scott had already showered and changed. There was a pile of wet towels on top of the washing machine.
And his clothes from that day are in the wash.
Actively tumbling. Jeans, a shirt, a green pullover. And even stranger, the camouflage jacket he claimed to have worn for cold weather fishing. It was dry and folded in his truck hours later.
Wait, if you're fishing for hours on the bay in December, that jacket is not going to be dry and neatly folded.
It creates a powerful conflict with his timeline. And there's one more detail that was so suspicious. He voluntarily told a friend that he wouldn't be surprised if the police found blood in his truck because, he claimed, I cut my hands all the time.
A preemptive excuse.
A preemptive excuse for something no one had even mentioned yet.
Okay, let's unpack this. The investigation was already intensely focused on him, but the whole thing just explodes when the focus shifts to his actions in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. That's when Amber Frey steps forward.
The introduction of Amber Frey, that fundamentally changed the optics of the case. But what's really fascinating here is the timing of his planning.
Go on.
Scott told Frey on December 6th, that's 18 days before the disappearance, that he had lost his wife and that this would be his first Christmas without her.
He already lost her.
3 days later, on December 9th, he buys a small 14-foot fishing boat.
And what stands out to me in the sources is he bought the boat without an anchor, right? If you're a genuine fisherman planning a trip 90 miles away on the bay, wouldn't you buy the gear?
Absolutely. The prosecution argued this was all hasty improvisation. He bought the boat right after a friend of Frey's threatened to expose his lies about being single. The boat gave him the means and the alibi.
So Amber Frey starts cooperating with the police.
Yes. She contacts them on December 30th and agrees to record their calls. And this led to some truly shocking behavior.
The call on New Year's Eve.
That's maybe the most damning behavioral evidence. He's on the phone with Frey while he is literally at a massive candlelight vigil for Laci.
And he tells her he's in Paris.
Watching fireworks near the Eiffel Tower, fabricating this whole international trip.
And, the sources show the jurors later confirmed the affair itself wasn't the deciding factor. It was his deception and just cold behavior after Laci vanished that painted this picture of a man who already knew she was gone for good.
And that lack of concern shows up in his actions. In January 2003, he's not acting like a frantic husband. He starts terminating his warehouse lease early. He's talking about selling their house.
He traded in Laci's Land Rover.
For a Dodge Dakota pickup, yeah. And maybe most tellingly, he converted Connor's nursery into a storage space, less than a month after they disappeared.
He's just systematically liquidating their entire shared future.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And surveillance showed him making these repeated, short, secret trips back to the Berkeley Marina in January using different cars, staying for just minutes at a time. It looked like someone checking on a disposal site.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. 4 months of frantic searches go nowhere. But in mid-April 2003, the ocean itself reveals the truth. Laci's and Connor's remains are found.
They wash ashore, just over a mile apart, on the San Francisco Bay, right near where Scott claimed he was fishing.
The forensics must have been incredibly difficult.
They were up against it. The remains had been in that marine environment for months. Laci's body was missing her head, forearms, a lower leg. But Dr. Allison Galloway confirmed her birth canal was closed. She died while still pregnant.
And what was the crucial finding about Connor? How did they narrow down the date of death?
Connor's body was intact. The key was they found monostomium in his intestines. That's the first stool a baby produces, but it happens before birth.
So he died in utero.
He died inside Laci's body and was expelled post-mortem. And the bone measurements allowed forensics to estimate the time of death for both of them was between December 21st and December 24th.
Which perfectly aligns with the disappearance date.
Perfectly. It just locks in the prosecution's timeline.
So now let's look at the purely physical, circumstantial evidence linking Scott to the marina.
There were several key things. Computer records showed he searched for boat ramps and charts for that specific Berkeley Marina area in early December, before she vanished.
And the fishing story itself was flimsy.
Totally bogus, according to an expert witness. His gear, his location, his method. It was all wrong for catching sturgeon or striped bass that time of year.
And the boat evidence, the one he bought just before Christmas.
So inside his warehouse, police find a large homemade cement anchor. The prosecution suggested he might have tried using multiple weights to submerge the body. Plus, a boat cover found in his shed smelled heavily of gasoline.
To mask the scent from trailing dogs.
That was the theory. And maybe the most specific piece of physical evidence. A single hair matching Laci's mitochondrial DNA was found clamped in the teeth of a pair of fishing pliers on his boat.
So the defense then had to focus on the lack of direct evidence, no eyewitness, no defined crime scene, and propose an alternative, the burglary across the street.
Right, they proposed Laci might have confronted two burglars, Stephen Todd and Donald Pierce, that morning, and that led to her abduction. This is where the timeline gets a little muddy.
How so?
The prosecution said that burglary happened on December 26th, and the burglars had alibis for the 24th. But the burglars themselves gave conflicting accounts, which allowed the defense to create just enough reasonable doubt.
Another controversial area was the scent dog evidence.
Oh yeah, the defense fought hard to discredit the prosecution's dog, Trimble, which trailed Laci's scent from her sunglasses right to the end of a pier at the Berkeley Marina.
They said the handler could have cued the dog.
Exactly. They argued the technique was unreliable. They even brought in testimony about another dog that supposedly trailed her scent somewhere else, near where the burglars lived.
So how did the courts eventually rule on that scent dog evidence?
Well, the California Supreme Court ruled it was admissible. The standard is that dog trailing evidence has to be corroborated by other facts.
And in this case?
In this case, the corroboration was that Laci's and Connor's bodies washed ashore just 2 miles from the exact spot the dog trailed her scent to. The court basically said, even if the dog evidence was weak, the sheer volume of other circumstantial evidence was enough.
That massive volume of information and the media scrutiny, it forced the trial to move.
It did, from Modesto to Redwood City. After a huge, highly publicized trial, the jury deliberated for 10 days.
And found him guilty.
Guilty. First-degree murder for Laci, second-degree for Connor.
That distinction is significant, isn't it?
It is. First degree for Laci implies premeditation. They believed he planned her murder. Second degree for Connor means they found him guilty of that murder, but didn't necessarily find specific premeditation was directed at the unborn child.
Both verdicts led to the death penalty in 2005, but then the appeals process kicked in.
Right. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned his death sentence. It was a technical error during jury selection.
Nothing to do with guilt or innocence.
Correct. The judge improperly dismissed jurors who just had a general philosophical opposition to the death penalty. The conviction itself was upheld. They said there was overwhelming evidence of guilt. So in December 2021, he was resentenced to life without parole.
And now, in 2024, the case has been reignited by the Los Angeles Innocence Project.
Yes. They took the case in January, claiming his rights were violated and that critical forensic evidence was overlooked. Their main goal now is post-conviction DNA testing.
But the judge only approved testing on one piece of evidence, correct?
That's right, just one single item, a 15.5-inch piece of duct tape found on Laci's pants. The prosecution opposed wider testing, arguing most of it had been tested years ago with negative results.
And as of now, those results are still pending.
Still pending.
Yeah.
The whole case is sort of hanging on that one piece of tape.
So what does this all mean? We have a conviction built almost entirely on a mountain of circumstantial evidence, layered with Scott's incredibly suspicious behavior, set against defense theories about other suspects.
And this raises a really important question. The jury convicted him based on that pattern of behavior, the boat, the lies about Paris, liquidating his family's future. They decided that proved guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
The question is, can one piece of new evidence change that?
Exactly. Even if new DNA testing on that single piece of duct tape points to an unknown profile, will that be enough to overcome the massive interconnected weight of everything else that convinced that jury 2 decades ago?
It's a fundamental challenge of direct evidence versus overwhelming implication. I mean, the media coverage was so intense, the trial judge once joked that the only place the case hadn't been heard of was Mars. Considering that scrutiny, what's the realistic threshold for any new evidence to shake a conviction that was so heavily defined by the court of public opinion long before a jury even sat down? The case where the story itself seems to perpetually overshadow the legal outcome.